I spent 10 years of my younger life working for the Forest Service and Idaho Fish and Game, and I spent a lot of time in the woods during that time. This is one of those stories that I look back on and I think, maybe it wasn't what I originally thought. And this used to be my bear story. I didn't believe in Bigfoot back then. I thought if Bigfoot was real, would have found him by now. But it was an interesting story, and I recorded this on day 2 of my trip. And I went the distance. I found my old photos from this trip, and I scanned them in. And these are actual pictures from that trip. And I will preface this by saying there were a lot of bears in this area. In case you're wondering, that's part handyman fire. Thought I'd tell you a story. It used to be my bear story, but looking back on it, I don't think it's a bear story. It's back probably in 2000, 1999, around there. I was working for the Forest Service. I was working in Nordman. It's Priest Lake. It's Northern Idaho. It's probably 20, 30 miles from the Canadian border. There's old growth forests everywhere. It's just really remote. It's a beautiful area. It's one of the only places in the world where it has giant western red cedars, which they rival the redwoods. I mean, they're huge. It's just a beautiful area. Anyway, I was working 410s, and I was doing stream surveying. And so I had a 3-day weekend. I'm like, well, what am I going to do this weekend? So I looked at the map. I found this lake, off the beaten path. I said, I'm going to go check that lake out and camp there. So Friday, I drive up, check it out. Nobody around for miles and miles and miles. I mean, this is so remote. And I camped at this lake. I had the whole lake to myself. I mean, it was the most awesome lake. I mean, there was a beaver in it, and it would make its rounds every night. There was an osprey, and it would dive and get fish. I mean, it was just such an awesome lake, and I loved it. I mean, this is awesome. It was like my own private lake out in the middle of nowhere. And I was a big mountain biker back then, so I mountain biked up to as high as I could. I mountain biked up the road to a high point, kind of an overlook area. From my camp. I didn't drive anywhere. I just mountain biked. And I mountain biked up, stopped and surveyed the landscape. And I'm kind of high, and I'm, you see just a forest of green, mountains, the beautiful. I'll probably insert a picture here. And I saw a meadow. This nice meadow down there. And I said, wow, that looks pretty awesome. I'm going to go check that meadow out. So I got back on my mountain bike, and I mountain biked on the road, and then I actually mountain biked cross country as far as I could. I mean, there's no trail to the meadow or anything, but I mountain biked a little bit as far as I could, and then stopped. And then I was just hiking downstream, completely cross country down to try to get to that meadow. And I'm hiking to that meadow, and all of a sudden I find this area, and it's right before I get to the meadow. And to describe this area, I just remember it being the coolest spot in the world. It'd be like, this would be a really cool place to live. I mean, it was like all the pine needles were gone from the ground. It was bare ground. And it was almost like this section over here was a bed section, and the trees were like the walls. And this little section is another little section. It was just, I'm like, wow, this is, I mean, I was just so amazed at how cool this spot was. I'm like, this is the coolest spot. And then there was this other spot over here on the opposite side, and there was a pile of bones. And they were all piled up. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And I'm like, I remember thinking, this is the coolest little place. This is so cool. I just remember thinking that is stuck in my head. And like, back door in quotation marks, the back door, you know, which would be a space in the pine trees. So you kind of go out the back door, and it's just the space, and there's a trail that kind of goes, and then all of a sudden you're in the meadow. Like all of a sudden, boom, you're in the meadow. And there were bushes, and they were probably knee to hip high, maybe between knee to hip high, and they were all huckleberries. It's a huge huckleberry patch. And there was a trail walking through the huckleberry patch. And, you know, over on the left, you know, there's a stream, because it's a meadow, and there was like a beaver pond. And anyway, so I started following the trail, you know, out into this meadow, and all of a sudden I see this huge pile of dung. That's the technical term. Actually, it's not a technical term. I can't think of it right now. Scat. It's a huge pile of scat. And it was just filled with berries. I mean, it was a huge pile. I'm like, oh man, this is bear. Like, oh my gosh, this is bear. Bear here for sure. But I keep going, keep walking, and I'm following a little trail through the huckleberries, bushes everywhere, and I'm just hiking. And then on the left, I'm looking at the beaver pond, and I see some ducks on it. And I have a camera around my neck, and I'm, getting into photography. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go take a picture of the ducks. So I start walking toward the ducks. Get a little bit closer. Then all of a sudden the ducks, they fly away, and they're like, and they fly away. And then all of a sudden I hear something running in the woods. I'm like, whoa, there's something running in the woods. And then I realize it's running toward me. And if you can picture this, I'm standing, in an open area with, thigh-high, bushes. And then right in front of me, probably 20 feet or something, is the tree line, where the forest ends and the tree starts. And whatever's running is running from the tree line toward me. And I mean, this probably only took a split second, but something's running in the woods, and it's running toward me, and this is going through my mind. I'm like, first I thought, oh, there's a disturbance, the ducks flew up. Wouldn't that scare an animal away? It would be running away from the disturbance. But no, it's running toward the disturbance. And so I'm like, this is all going through my head. And so I'm like, shoot, whatever it is a predator, because it's running toward the disturbance. And I can just hear it running toward me. And I picture it. I'm thinking it's a bear. I just saw a big pile of bear crap. And bunch of huckleberry built in. I don't know what it was. But it was coming toward me, and once it came out of that, if it was running and it came out of the line of trees, it would be right there on top of me. I mean, it would be there, like boom, right in my face. And so I'm like, oh, this is all running through my head at once. And so I yell, and the only thing I could think of was, hello, hello. I'd yell hello, and then the running stops. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I totally sneak up. I don't go back the way I came. I'm going to high ground as fast as I can. High ground. And I get to high ground and I turn around, I look. I'm scanning. And I never do see anything. And then I go back to camp and, have a nice camping time. But what, thinking back on it, I mean, there wouldn't be any animal who wouldn't have a nice, neat pile of bones in one area. And it was completely devoid of, it was like it was swept. And really, this is in the middle of nowhere. And I crossed country to get to it. It's not like next to the road. I had to cross country hike to it. And I remember in my head that this is the coolest little spot in the world. This would be a great little spot. Now it makes me wonder. Maybe that was Bigfoot domicile. I don't know. I'm leaning toward it. And I just thought I'd share that with you guys. Yes, 24 years later, I'm like, why didn't I take a picture of the scat? That would have been cool. Why didn't I take a picture of the pile of bones? Why didn't I take a picture of that cool little area I found? But back then, it was like, it's all film camera, and every picture's important. It's not like nowadays where you can just take pictures, blah, 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 blah. It's like you have to pay money to buy film and get it developed, and so no, I didn't take pictures of that. A lot of interesting things happened when I was working there. I'll probably share a couple more things, but one thing I do remember that I will add on this is that where I was living in Nordman, it just, it wasn't in town, but it was like a Forest Service shop. We had a lot of bears that got into our trash, and there would always be bears. I mean, I got pictures of bears. I had a bear got in our kitchen one time and came running out the door as I was going there. I mean, lots of bears. So they ended up getting a bear-proof dumpster, a big, huge metal dumpster that's bear-proof. And I remember shortly after they got it, something opened the bear-proof container like a tin can. I mean, just bent it back like it was nothing. At the time, I thought it was a bear, of course, but thinking back, maybe that wasn't a bear that had done that. I mean, it might have took hands to bend it over. But, it could have been a bear, too. That bent that back it was like a tin can just open. I mean, it just bent that dumpster back. Anyway, thanks for watching, and, I hope you enjoyed my story.